Welcome. You are listening to Haunted Histories on Paranormal UK Radio. So, my guests tonight, and I do apologise that this is a week or so late, but, you know, it is the time to be poorly, regardless of awful pandemics that are going around. People seem to forget there are other things buzzing around in the air now as well. But my guests tonight are two ladies who I got the opportunity to meet when I did a podcast for them. I think it was last year. I can't remember. And everything sort of blended into one now. And I got to be interviewed by them, and it was so much fun. And then they invited me back again this summer, and we had a blast again, and we had some lovely questions, amazing questions from people who were listening to the show. And I asked them if they'd return the favour and come on Haunted Histories, because, you know, these things have got to be done. You know, if you find someone's interesting to talk to and they've got experiences that you haven't experienced, you ask them on. And so today, I'd like to welcome Kim and Alison from REP Paranormal. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Now, I mentioned your podcast. We'll get onto the podcast in a minute, because obviously that's something you guys are quite well known for. But where did REP come from?
REP actually comes from the three founders of our team, and it's from our last names. Mm-hmm. So Kim's last name is Purvis, mine's Robinson, and then we have Gina Eberline. She makes up the E in REP.
Mm-hmm. And so
that's how we kind of came up with it.
Sounds good. So when did you guys start? What made you start? You know, tell us all about REP.
You want me to go, Kim, or are you going to go?
You can go first.
Okay. So the three of us actually played softball together. Oh. I've known Kim all my life. She used to babysit me. Her mother used to babysit me. Her mother babysat my kids.
Oh, wow.
And we're neighbors. So, but we all played softball together, and a couple of the gals on the team had heard about Villisca, and they're like, you know, we should all go to Villisca. That would be so much fun to go stay in an axe murder house. And we're like, okay, let's do it. So we're like, let's go out. We bought some cheap recorders, like $20 recorders. I had an old camcorder, you know, the ones that tape the cassette tapes, and it has night vision on it. And that's literally what we went with. And it was a blast. Like, we had so much interaction and so many, you know, experiences that were like, we should do this more often. Let's, you know, find some other places. And that's kind of how we came about.
Cool. Well, the thing is, I mean, you're based in Iowa. Mm-hmm. And even though, I mean, since doing Haunted Histories for the last sort of 3.5 years, my geographical knowledge of sort of places like the US and Canada and Australia and all that, it's got a lot better than it used to be. But Iowa does seem to be a bit of a hotbed for cool places for the paranormal. I mean, you've mentioned Villisca, obviously managed by the fantastic Johnny Hauser.
Yes.
I am trying fervently to sweet talk to come on and do a show on Haunted Histories next year. You've also got Malvern Manor, with
Yep.
Kiefer Sutherland's little brother.
Yep.
Josh
That's
Bird.
right.
Anyone who doesn't get that joke, just go and Google Josh Bird and see what he looks like, and you'll get why we call him Kiefer Sutherland.
we still got to work on getting him to do that.
I
Dress him like that.
I know.
We will get him to do that. We're at Malvern all the time, so we'll get him to do it.
And I mean, so you've got Matt. I mean, what other places? I know you've got loads in Iowa that when I suddenly look at them and go, "Oh my God, that's Iowa! That's Iowa! That's Iowa!" You could spend a good couple of months just touring the cool places of Iowa.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have Granger House. That is an amazing place to go in Marion.
Mm-hmm.
You have Farrar Schoolhouse, another awesome place to go.
One. Yeah.
Yep. And then you have Edinburgh Manor, which is another great place to go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many locations. There's some that we're still learning about.
Yeah.
And there's some that, we have been to, but they're not really open to the public yet. So we can't really disclose those yet, but maybe sometime in the future they would be, open. But there's just so many more places that are popping up too. And hopefully we can get to them all soon. I mean, we've been to Farrar, we've been to Edinburgh, we've been to Malvern, Villisca. There's the Klondike Hotel.
Uh-huh.
That was like Squirrel Cage Jail.
I didn't know that one was in Iowa. That's another one
it's in Council Bluffs. Yeah. That's a very neat place to go. It's an awesome looking jail. Like it's really neat.
Yeah.
Like to get back there. But I mean, there's just so many places. Yeah, you could literally spend a lot of time going around to all these different haunted locations.
Yeah, I definitely think Iowa's got to be on my road trip list.
Yes.
If I get across the pond.
That's right. I
mean, Iowa and Tennessee at the moment seem to be the two that pulling me like nobody's business. But it's a bit of a trek. And
yes.
Yeah. I can't just pop over for the weekend, which is unfortunate.
Right.
So you mentioned Edinburgh. Now, anyone looking, who sees the title of this show, it is actually about Edinburgh Manor. Now, I know that in the UK it's Edinburgh, but they pronounce the manor Edinburgh. So it's not me mispronouncing it. That's the local pronunciation of the word. So any Scots listening to this who are annoyed that I'm mispronouncing their city, I'm not, I promise. It's how they pronounce it locally. Now, you guys mentioned this place to me because when you first said Edinburgh Manor, I thought, well, that just sounds like a house, and houses can be interesting, but they don't always get my juices flowing, shall we say. They don't always get my haunted sort of, I can research this sort of juices going. But then you started telling me about its history. Now, one of the things that I have to not chuckle at is with a lot of American history and Australian history as well. If you're ignoring the native populations, so the Native Americans or the Aborigines or whatever in those countries, your history is quite young in sort of relation to ours. I mean, I love watching American Pickers for the history stuff on it. And the husband and I do kill ourselves laughing when they say, oh, wow, this is really old. When was it made? 1825. And we're killing ourselves laughing because in the UK, that's not even middle-aged these days. It's kind of relatively young.
Yeah.
But when you look at American history and you look at these places like where Edinburgh Manor is, as a place that probably was only constructed as a place sort of 20, 30 years before that building went up. So it is very sort of, I suppose, old in the context of the history of the town. Now, tell me, because I haven't been able to work out what actual is the town or the village or whatever that Edinburgh Manor is actually, because I know it's in Jones County, which is Iowa. Is it class? And I read something about it. It was in the Wayne Township.
Yeah, they say it's in the Wayne Township. There's also like another little town that you pass through to get there, but then it's also classified under Scotch Grove, Iowa.
Right.
But yeah, I have heard that it is under Waynes County, and then I think it transpired maybe to Jones County after that.
Right. Okay. So for those listening from the UK, obviously in the UK we don't have states. We have counties and we have the town or the area.
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking up stuff for the US, we've got the town, we've got the county, and we've got the state.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about this is the building was first donated, or the land was first donated, I believe, to be a courthouse.
Right.
But because the sort of this county seat, if you like, was changed from the Wayne Township or Edinburgh to somebody else, they did not to use it as a courthouse, and it became what would become known as a poor farm or poorhouse, however you want to call it. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
Nope. So
that was around 1850 that it was opened as a poorhouse or poor farm, and it's on about 300 acres of land, I believe.
Yeah, it was like between 200 and 300 acres.
Yeah, so reasonably good sized plot, because excuse me, the difference between like the poorhouses and poor farms in the US compared to the workhouses, which is the equivalent in the UK, was most of ours wouldn't have had much land attaching to them. They the land would have been used for other things. It wouldn't have been, there weren't many that had farms attached to them. The work that people in the UK would have been doing was a lot more monotonous and sort of breaking rocks and grinding things and what's called oakum picking, where they'd rip up bits of old rope to be reused for something else. Whereas the able-bodied in the American poor farms were able to work on the farm, so to help contribute towards the food, they were able to get out in the fresh air. I would have thought it wasn't as bad a way of being. Now, it was torn down or repurposed, shall we say, around 1911. And ostensibly it was classed more as a sort of a mini asylum, but it still operated as a type of poor farm and poorhouse. And gradually evolving after the sort of the late 1940s into somewhere where the elderly could live who couldn't afford to live anywhere else.
Right.
Now, as soon as you mention the word asylum, and as soon as you look at even the workhouse words and everything else, people tend to recoil in horror. I start to picture demonic entities and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So my first question to you both is, how does it feel in there? Does it feel menacing, or is there more to it than that?
The first time that we ever visited Edinburgh was probably 5 years ago, maybe. And when we first went there, it was a little spooky at first, but nothing felt threatening or menacing or anything to that effect. Now, over the years, I can feel there's a shift of the energy in that place. I wouldn't say it's evil, demonic, or anything like that, but I think with everybody who has been through there and done who knows what in there, different rituals and things have left different energies. Yeah. And so depending on when you go, sometimes, you feel, oh, okay, it's calm. Other times you're there and it's like, okay, I don't want to walk by myself. And I think it just depends on who has been there and what they have stirred up or left behind. Brought in. Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I don't think anything is demonic there.
No. Because what I managed to find, and as I was saying to you both before we came on air, there's scant information about it some of the other places I've researched over the years.
Right.
But what I did find is that even after it stopped being even before it became more of a class as an asylum as well as a poorhouse, it still had people with mental health issues going there, which was exactly the same as the workhouses in the UK, because you've had people going there who weren't ill enough per se to go to a full-blown asylum, but were too ill to look after themselves in the open world. So that was the next best thing. So they were supervised. They know that they were getting fed. They'd know they'd have somewhere to sleep. They'd have a roof over their heads and everything else. But they didn't really need any sort of medical, or whatever medical there was in the sort of late 1800s, but they didn't actually need a medical intervention. So even though how it operated changed after about 1911, I do wonder how the clientele changed that much, or if they did.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure. As it became the Manor, there was reports of like rape and things like that in there, but I haven't actually come across anything that is actual proof of that happening, but it's just hearsay that they've been reported. And so, maybe there have been some. I think there were some that had been arrested at one point and then they were there. So, there could have been different clientele that came through there as it became the Edinburgh Manor. But like I said, it's hard to tell because there's really not a lot of information about it online, and we've been meaning to get to the museum, but it's always closed when we have a chance to go. So
yeah, I mean, I did quite a long scour under loads of different sort of leads and everything through the newspapers, through the American newspapers, to see if I could find any stories that would then lead me to think that some kind of corruption or criminal offence had taken place, and I found none. And I must admit, I start looking for things. I am using every single different search criteria you can think of. So whether that was, I even searched under the architect who built it. That I think his name was Charles Demon, which I found quite funny.
Yeah.
I searched under him. I searched under the poor farm stewards who were there: John Platner, Obi Doyle, Andrew MacDonald, even one of the more recent, the one who was there during World War II, whose name was Roscoe Easterly. I searched through all of those. I searched through the various names. So whether it's Jones County Home, Jones County Houses, Jones County Poorhouse, Edinburgh Manor, you name it, I searched under it, and I couldn't find I didn't find anything that would indicate something bad had happened. Which I found quite interesting. And I mean, I did find records of some patients who were in as, they call them insane, which obviously we wouldn't use terminology now, but then they were, and only a few of them looked like they ended up being moved to one of the bigger four systems that Iowa had, which anyone listening would be in Independence State Hospital, Mount Pleasant, Clarinda, and Cherokee were the four main state asylums in the state of Iowa. And only a few people ended up being moved to them, which I thought was quite interesting. So what sort of experiences have you had there? What sort of things have you picked up on?
Well, my cousin and I have seen a elderly woman there. We have also, we have a Steve that comes up a lot. I haven't been able to figure out who he is because that's all he will say. Like he comes up on our spirit box every time and it's the same voice and all he says is Steve. So I don't know if he may have had a disability or what, but that's somebody we get every time we go there. He does like to come up to us in the puzzle room. He's interacted with us through some of Kim's different K2s and what is the other thing she has? The periscope that lights up. He will answer questions through that. I have picked up on he portrays himself as an older gentleman who's kind of grumpy in the basement.
Yeah.
But he acts, I mean, he looks older, but he seems to be a little bit younger the way he talks. I don't know, he's very vulgar and rude. But I mean, you hear a lot of noises, like you'll be sleeping at night and you will hear running up and down the halls. You hear things being moved. I mean, we have it all on recorders. It sounds like there's furniture being drug across the floors in there. And, you know, that stuff to me seems to be residual because you get it pretty much every time you go.
Yeah.
But, you know, a lot of people say that they have picked up on a little girl there, Susie. I haven't really had any connection with her yet, per se. I mean, we've just gotten a lot of random things. Kim, what have you picked up on there?
Well, we met a little boy in the cemetery.
Oh, that's right.
His name was Henry, and we always go to the cemetery and pay our respects to the people over there before we start our investigation. And there's this first stone. He was 8 years old, and our equipment was kind of going off with him, and we promised him we'd do some things for him if he would send our temperature down to a certain temp. And it went straight down to where it wanted, what we told it to do. Hello? You still there? Still there?
I can hear you.
Okay. And it sent it straight down to what we told it to send the temperature down to. And Alison had to do cartwheels, and I had to do a hula hoop for him. well, Alison did her cartwheels, so we had to go back to Edinburgh to the building to find the hula hoop. And we asked him if he was with us, and our equipment would go off like crazy. The music box, everything. Every time we mentioned Henry, he was following us. It would set off the equipment, so I had to do the hula hoop. I'm not good at the hula hoop. But as soon as we did our...
I would have been in trouble. I'd have had to offer to sing.
The music box would go crazy.
How'd you do the cartwheel?
So we met with Henry.
Yeah.
But when I first started going there, I could walk that place by myself.
Yeah.
But now I will not go anywhere by myself anymore. I don't know what it is about the place anymore.
That's interesting you say that, because I can't remember who I was having this conversation with not so long ago. It was like an off-air, just a general chat. And we were saying the same thing about this other place. And I can't for the life of me remember where it was. That when he had first started investigating there, and he'd been going there for about 10 years now, it was really nice, it was really pleasant and everything else. But because it suddenly got a rumour for being demonic and everything else, people are going in there with that attitude, and they're bringing nastier things with them. And he said he went in there once and found evidence that someone had been doing some kind of contacting ritual of people that they shouldn't be trying to contact. And it does make me wonder. I mean, people, that kind of, if you don't know what people are going in there with, the attitude they're going in there, they could be doing harm to other people because they think they're having fun, and they think they, I'm going to prove demons exist and all this. And they could be getting through some pretty nasty entities, not necessarily demons, not necessarily demonic, but just nasty pieces of work that are attracted to that sort of negative energy and decide, there's a lot of people coming in here, I'm going to stay here because I can feed off it. Because I do think there's a misconception about anywhere that was a workout, like a workhouse, poorhouse, asylum, all those kind of things that, they weren't nice places to be, but that was society that said they weren't nice places to be because they didn't want to encourage people to go to them in the day. You know, they created that stigma to keep people away. But for a lot of people who went to them, they would have been dead in a ditch.
Exactly.
For these sort of escape routes that they could use. But it's you must have read my mind though, Kim, because the next thing I was going to talk about was the on-site cemetery. What's it like? Are there still markers there where people are buried?
There are stones. Yeah. It's across. It's like down the street a little bit, across the road. There are stones, but a lot of people, I think, have knocked them over.
Right.
So some of them are laying down, or they're standing up. You know, somebody has propped them up against other stones that are still standing, which is pretty sad.
Mm.
You know,
There's
and then
36 of them.
That's what? Sorry,
there's 36 of them.
36, right.
You know, and then they talk about how there's some that are buried on the properties that are unmarked.
Mm. Yeah.
Where they're at, who knows? I haven't come across anything that says there are some there. There's just, you know, a lot of people said that there's some that are buried on the grounds that are unmarked and nobody really knows where they're at. So
yeah, I mean, it's possible. I mean, this is another thing that, you know, sorry to anyone who's wanting horror stories about these places, but if you look at the kind of person from 1850 onwards would have needed to come here, they would have either been elderly, so, you know, without sounding too callous, they were towards the end of their lives anyway.
Right.
Or they could have been, you know, they may not have had good health when they went in, because if they were poor and they couldn't afford healthcare, or they couldn't afford a good diet, or they weren't eating properly anyway, or, you know, all those kind of things. It's you know, looking at the mortality rate of somewhere like a poorhouse or whatever, it's kind of a misnomer, because the mortality rate would be higher because of the factors contributing, and I'm not saying this is necessarily right, but it doesn't mean anything nefarious was going on. It just meant that people were coming in a lower state of health, perhaps,
right,
than were living outside.
Right.
I did find that in 1910, there was, I think it said in 1910, and this number seems very low, there was 30, and they used the term paupers living there, 19 men, 11 women, or 19 male, 11 female. It doesn't differentiate between children.
Right.
17 of those 30 were Native Americans. Native to America, sorry, not Native Americans. 13 were foreign. It also stipulates as to what colour skin they had. All of them at this point were Caucasian. There was no sort of other skin colours. And during 1910, there were 6 new people admitted, 4 of which were male, 2 of which are female, 2 transfers to institutions, it says. So I'm presuming somewhere like Independence or whatever, and deaths. So, you know, that's quite a high number when you look at the total number of people. But it doesn't say sort of whether any of those came in with existing conditions, how old they were.
Right.
You know, because there was no pension, no support system. You didn't really have a choice. But I just wonder, I mean, you mentioned the little boy, Henry, who you meet in the cemetery. I'm going to actually have a look at some of the records I found to see if I can find a Henry who would have been there when it was a poorhouse, I would have thought, as part of a family. I doubt he would have gone there when it changed to being a hospital, because the census records I've gone through, I couldn't find anyone under the age of 25.
Yeah.
So it would have been when it was more as to look after sort of the poor of the community. But with so many illnesses and stuff going around with children, most children, I can't remember, I don't know what the statistic was in the States, but in the UK in the late 1800s, I think something like, it was almost, depending on what area of the UK you were, it could be 2 in 5 children, or 2 in 4 children, or 1 in 4 didn't make it to the age of 5.
Oh, wow.
So because of things like whooping cough, scarlet fever,
right,
all that, diphtheria, all those kind of illnesses, and they weren't just in the UK. I know they were, you know, America would have had them as well. So it wouldn't have been unusual, but it would have still almost sad that a little boy is stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
Kim, you mentioned that you don't like going there on your own now.
Yeah.
What's happened to you to make you feel like that?
I just, as soon as I walk in that place, it's like the hair stand up on my arms and everything. I just get this weird feeling anymore. And I get a real deep headache when I go into certain places.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, I can't go there, not with the headache. And then it's like all of a sudden, well, then I go back to that room later and it's like no headache this time. So I don't know what is drawing the headache or what is going on. But I cannot go down in the basement by myself anymore.
Yeah, me either.
Right. Are either of you two got mediumistic abilities or are sensitives or?
Well, I mean, some people say I do. I mean, I don't classify myself as anything. I do, get names that'll pop into my head, visions of certain things that may have happened there. I have been recently told that I'm a channeler, so I will channel from other places when I'm at a location.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I can't go down in the basement by myself after that grumpy man. There's just something about him that's not right, and a lot of times he tries to get me to go down there alone, but I will not go down there by myself.
Because I read there's a spirit who's nicknamed the Joker.
Oh, yeah.
Is it the grumpy man, or is this a different one?
This is a different guy. I have not had any experience that I'm aware of with the Joker yet. Mm-hmm. What people say, he is like this tall, lanky shadow figure. I have not come across him yet. I think this is two separate things.
Right. What about you, Kim? What is it? Do you find you have sort of sensitive abilities, or is it just that, it's got stronger the more you visited there?
I think mine's more getting stronger every time I visit there. I just get feelings. I don't see nothing. I can't hear no one talking to me, but I just get feelings like I shouldn't be here, or this one's fine. I just get those kind of feelings that shouldn't be where I should be,
Almost like a sixth sense that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because it's interesting you mentioned the headache, because that happens to me in certain places. I will get a thumping headache, and then normally something will happen. It's almost like it's almost like my own EMF meter.
Right.
I'll get the headache, and then seconds later the K2 go off, or the mel meter will shoot up, or whatever. So I maybe it's that sort of sensitivity to a change in the atmosphere gives you the headache, or sometimes I've wondered if it's a spirit sort of draining, drain some of my energy to do something. It gives me the headache, because it's when you move away from that place, the headache goes. Almost click of your fingers, it's gone. And it's quite a strange thing to explain to someone, that a blinding headache in this one part of a building. I think the weirdest one, I was at a place called The Village in Nottingham in the UK, and I was in this. It had been a nightclub in the 80s, and I was in this one bit, and I'd been down there a couple of times, and they were talking about this bouncer who had been killed on the premises, and this was known. It was in the news and everything else. But it's not. I didn't know about it, but it had been in the news. I found the newspaper articles on it subsequently. But as they were talking about it, I got this searing pain in the side of my head, like someone had literally thumped me in the side of my head. I mean, it was the point where my eyes went. I couldn't sit, and I was like, I'm just going to leave. I've got to go. And it transpires that he was hit in the side of the head with a bottle. As they were talking about it, that's what happened. What knocked him out, and then I think he got beaten to death, if I remember rightly. But it was just strange. But when I went back down there again, didn't happen. And it's very sort of strange to try and explain this to people who don't kind of thing happen.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any parts of the building that, I mean, you mentioned the basement. Are there parts of the building that you do feel comfortable going into on your own?
The kids' room.
The kids' room, yeah, that's not too bad to go in there alone.
Tell me about the kids' room. What is it?
It's basically like there's several beds in there and there's a lot of toys in it. That's why we call it the kids' room. Mm-hmm. And we get a lot of interaction from kids. We actually had Henry follow us over there. The last time we were there, we had some interaction with him, but we've also had a little Hispanic boy, but I can't remember. Do you remember his name, Kim?
Carlos.
I think it was Carlos.
Yeah, Carlos.
Mm-hmm. And we caught him on the Connect too.
Right.
Which was pretty cool. I think it was when he reached out and touched Kim's cousin's hand or something like that. We asked him to, and he would tell us which bed was his. He told us the bed with the sombrero was his, and it was kind of interesting. But I mean that room does not feel threatening or anything like that at all.
And is that because there's 2 floors, isn't there?
Yeah, it's on the main floor.
So the first floor, the ground floor, so to speak.
Yep. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Do you feel a difference? And there's a reason I'm asking this, and I will tell you this after I've asked the question. Do you feel a difference in the energy of the ground floor or the first floor and the second floor? Do they feel different at all?
It kind of just, to me, it varies. From when I go there. I don't, sometimes, like I said, I believe when other people come, they bring different energies. There's times where the main floor, I get an uneasy feeling, especially down by, like, I call it the pool room because there's a pool table, but there's this bathtub that faces differently than all the other ones. And, I've seen like a woman in that bathtub and stuff, and I just get an uneasy feeling down there. That's also where I saw the older woman.
Yeah.
So sometimes I get an uneasy feeling, and like when I turn to go down that way, which the turn off to that pool room is by the kids' room, I will be like, shut off. Like I can't go any farther. Now upstairs, I don't really have any issues up there. Like I really don't.
The reason I'm asking, and there is a reason, there is method in my madness, is that the log I found of patients from 1942 to 1950, it appears that the downstairs, i.e. the first floor, was basically able-bodied, poor and elderly, so people who didn't need additional supervision. And the second floor was where they put those patients who had mental health issues. And it's interesting that you're saying that the ground floor where the I suppose indigent, i.e. poor people, paupers as they would have were, feels more intimidating than the floor where people with mental health conditions would be.
Right.
Which kind of I find interesting, and it makes me wonder if when people go into an asylum to investigate, they almost go in assuming it's going to be manic and everything else because they know the people who were there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it does to me. I don't know. I've always had that feeling though, like that main floor, I get that way. And especially where they call it the rape room is, going the opposite direction. The last time Kim and I were there, she went down towards the rape room. I went the opposite way. And then I stopped and I'm like, something's not right. I feel something. And I literally felt like I was being rushed and I took off. Like I freaking hauled it. Like I was like, nope, I am not going down that hallway. That's the first time I've ever had that issue though, going down that hallway. So there's definitely something there. And I don't know, like I said, it could be other energies that people have brought in, but just because somebody was insane or had some kind of issue doesn't always mean that they're going to be the ones causing the issues and being the ones to stir up all the problems.
That's exactly the point I'm trying to make. And they say, I've had this conversation with so many investigators that if you didn't know a place had been, say, an asylum, and I don't mean a place like only Edinburgh, I mean if you were going to Clorinda or Independence or somewhere that was a huge, or Trans-Allegheny or those sort of places. If you didn't know what that had been, we go in with a different mindset. And I maintain most people, a lot of people would. I almost wonder if when people go to investigate somewhere that was a mental health hospital or an insane asylum or whatever you want to call it, a lot of people will already go in with the whole sort of, water hydrotherapy, people being chained up, ECT, all these methods at the time they thought would help, but subsequently we know, didn't really. If they didn't know that before they went in, would they react differently when faced with things happening to them? It's something that it would be very, very hard to do as an experiment, because you can normally tell a place that's been a hospital of some sort,
right?
But that was why I asked the question. So that's very interesting. What would you say, Kim? Would you say the floors feel different, or?
I get more of a strange feeling in the basement and upstairs where Alison, it don't bother Alison. I think the second floor never bothered me till they put the coffin in.
Right.
And now it's like, I do not like going into that area.
Right.
I don't know what it is about it.
Probably because they always want you to get in it.
Well, that's true there too, but
is it a real? Is it an old coffin, or is it a replica? Or
it's a newer casket. It's an actual casket,
right?
Like, I mean, it is what I think it's a blue one or a light blue, sky blue. It's a very nice looking casket,
right?
And they actually have put a mannequin head stuffed with pillows in there to keep people out of it, because it's starting to fall apart from people getting into it.
Yeah, well, you can't, you can't do something like that to paranormal people. Put a coffin in a place and not expect.
And then I know, right?
It's like anywhere that has a mortuary table, and they say don't get on the table. You're like, really?
Yeah, we're gonna get on the table.
You've got to, it's an experiment. Yeah,
right.
I just think it's interesting that, especially with yourself, Alison, that you feel more intimidated, shall we say, by the bit that has got had the what you would be classed as just able-bodied people. I do just find that very, very interesting. But then Kim, you say, Kim, that the top floor bothers you a bit more now because of the coffin. It never used to.
Yeah, I used to walk around that whole building by myself all the time. They'll forget some equipment. Kim, go get it. Kim, go get it. I always went and got it. Now it's not. You're coming with me.
I just wonder, though, if there are any sort of intelligent spirits on that floor, them suddenly seeing a coffin brought in would scare them. I mean, especially if you've got people who are not, maybe got lower level of sort of age-appropriate intelligence, if you get what I mean, and things like that. You'd be terrified if someone brought a coffin in.
Right.
Which would affect the vibe as well, I would have thought. I mean, I know it's all supposition because nobody knows for sure, but...
right.
Well, two rooms down from the coffin room is supposedly a person died in that room from cancer.
Yeah.
So it's not far from that coffin room, and that's the area that bothers me.
Okay. Well, like I say, I mean, it wouldn't be unusual if especially when it was used as a sort of an old people's facility for people to have died in there. And, someone could have gone in there who was suffering with cancer and they didn't know about it at the time because they didn't know what cancer was earlier in sort of the 20th century and late 19th century. It's all these kind of things are sort of, they're very sad though, and it would be nice to sort of, if someone there is upset and is kind of haunting it in a negative way, to be able to give them some peace and be able to sort of let them know they can move on. But yeah, okay. So you mentioned that you know, Alison, you mentioned that you've seen the old lady on the ground floor. You mentioned you've seen lady in the bath tub. Were either of those interactive, or were they more sort of residual?
They didn't interact with me at all. Like, it was just like a vision. Like, well, the woman I actually saw, my cousin and I were actually we were standing by that bathtub, and across from there is a door to go up some stairs, and there's a window in that door. And her and I were going to use those stairs to go up. While I went to go pull open the door, and something like grabbed it, so I couldn't. And then that's when we saw the older woman in the window.
Right.
But the other one is when Cindy was giving us the tour, my cousin and I both at the same time had the vision of the woman in the bathtub. She didn't really interact with us or anything. I think it was more residual.
Yeah.
But we did catch some EVPs, though, in that bathroom of a woman asking us to help her.
Wow, that was going to be my next question, actually.
Yeah.
EVPs. God, you two are good. You're reading my mind across the now, one of the things that you know, you do seem to get a lack of interaction. Now, whether it's because it is residual energies there, or whether it's something else. Now, some of the research I was doing, and this was exactly the same in the UK, is that for many, many years, and to an extent even now, sadly, people who are poor, people who need assistance, are kind of seen as pariahs. They're seen as deviants. They were, and especially back then, they were seen as not being good enough to interact with people outside the walls. What do you think is the possibility? And again, this is, you know, there's no evidence to denote this, but I'm just thinking. Do you think that could possibly be the reason that they don't interact so much with you? And the only ones that seem to interact, from what you're saying, are children who wouldn't yet have had that. You know, by the time, if they passed away as children, they wouldn't have had that kind of "you don't talk to people who don't live here" sort of mentality.
Right. I mean, that is always a possibility. Or maybe some of them just weren't capable of talking. Maybe they don't understand. Maybe some of them weren't able to speak. You know, you just don't know. And then some may have had that where, I'm not going to interact with you because, you know, you don't live here. Or some of it could be residual as well that we're hearing or feeling or.
Yeah. Because you do have, I mean, on the census records that I found, an incredibly high percentage of non-Americans there.
Right.
An awful lot from like Hungary, Germany.
So they may not understand our language, what we're saying, if we're speaking in a different, I mean, not last time we were there, but the time before, we were actually getting Spanish speaking people coming up through our spirit box, which we've never had before.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're probably, I mean, I didn't see any on the censuses I looked at that said they were Spanish. I didn't see any Mexican or South American. It's an awful lot from other parts of Europe.
Yeah, there was.
So like Germany, Hungary, or Bohemia, as it was called then. All those sort of places. And it wasn't just at one time of the year. I mean, I did find quite a few that had gone over in sort of 1930, 1931. But I also found quite a few that went over at the turn of the century as well. So I just sort of wonder if that, you know, learn a phrase in Hungarian or learn a phrase in German and see.
Germany. Right. Yeah, that's something that we need to try at some point, because I didn't realize there were so many different they were from so many different countries, but that could be another reason too. There could be like a language barrier as well, and that they just don't understand what we're asking them.
Yeah.
But
well, in that 1910 list, the people who were there at the beginning of 1910, nearly 50% were foreign.
Yeah. Yep. They were.
They may not understand the language, which must make them feel even more trapped if they can't even understand what people are. But then that brings you into the other paranormal question, isn't it? Is, can spirits understand any language? So why would you go into somewhere that was, say, French and start talking English, or can they understand?
Right.
It's something that a lot of people have sort of deliberated on. But I have heard experiences of people using a language that might be more comfortable to the people who would have been there, and getting a lot of reactions as a trigger. So that might be it. You'll have to go with it. Let me know what happens.
Oh yes, absolutely. We're hoping to get back there next year. It's a hard place to get into, so that's one of our goals, is to hopefully get in there, so that way we can do a little more exploring. And yeah, definitely we're gonna have to try some different languages and see
who's that
what
wanting
happens.
to join in. Who's that wanting to join in right now, Alison?
Oh, that's Bella. I let her inside. Now she wants to go back outside. So.
And which is Bella? Is she the lab? Is she the pity?
She's the lab. She's the lab one.
The lab. Okay.
Yeah.
She's my buddy.
She's your mother, Bella.
Yep.
Push.
I put her back outside.
Give her sticks. She'll be happy.
Well, she's got plenty of sticks out there from all the storm damage. So.
Oh, I love it. I love dogs. So what other sort of places are you hoping to get to sort of explore sort of between now and the end of the year? Is there anything on the horizon for you guys?
We don't have anything else planned for the rest of the year that I know of. I know.
Melbourne.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think Melbourne probably. I think we're going to be hitting that up maybe. But next year's I think it's going to be kind of busy. I think we're trying to get back to McIntyre Villa, which we just went to a few weeks ago in Kansas, which was awesome.
Which I did a fantastic, and not saying I was fantastic, but I did a fantastic podcast with Steph.
Oh yes, I love her. She's great.
Fantastic. And we had quite a lot of stuff happen after we went off air, because I didn't actually at the time realise she was talking to me from the villa. So keep an eye out for an article I'm writing for her about one of the former residents of the villa, because I found some information out about him that she didn't know. And
awesome.
Yeah, we're going to be doing I'm going to be doing an article for her to put on the website and obviously share around.
Very cool.
About one of the former residents. And I'm not saying any more than that right now, but she sent me some EVPs that she got whilst I was chatting to her, and someone was definitely trying to talk back to me.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yes. So yeah, so you got Mac. How far is McIntyre from you guys then?
It was about 4 hours.
Oh crumbs, that's a long way in the UK.
It wasn't too bad of a drive, actually. It was pretty nice. Where else? Hopefully get to the Cambry House in Illinois. Love to get to Sumner School once that's up and running. I'd love to get to the Sally House in Kansas. We actually drove by there and took some pictures, and there was an area that was calling to me like I needed to get in there, but of course I couldn't. But I've been drawn to that place. I've never seen the inside of the place. I've just heard about it. People are always talking about how it freaks them out, and I just got to try it for myself.
See, that's an interesting one, because that was I did the Sally House is in Atchison, isn't it? Same as McIntyre, and I did a show on that one 2 years ago, and one of the people I spoke to about it said it's never scared her at all. She said I've never had a negative experience, and she used to run it. Be one of the tour guides there, and it just it's interesting. So, what people who have had negative experiences, what has influenced them,
right?
to make them feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I would like to go to, like, come over when it's the Amelia Earhart
Oh yeah.
festival that they have. She's fantastic, and Atchison, for anyone who didn't know, is her birthplace. But
Mm-hmm. Yep. We actually toured that.
yeah,
Is
it as good as I would hope it to be?
It's pretty interesting, but we were only able to tour the main floor. The upstairs is like off limits,
Right.
so that was kind of a bummer. But I mean, it was fairly interesting, and they had a lot of information that you could look at in there. But I really wish we could have got upstairs.
They were remodeling.
Yeah.
Upstairs.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, so you've got Atchison you want to get back to. You've got some other places. And what would be, girls, what would be on your ultimate wish list anywhere in the world? If I was your fairy godmother, I could wave my magic wand, where would you go?
There's so many good places, but I always talk about how I want to go to New Orleans. Like, I want to dive into New Orleans and just their culture and their history. That place has just got, like, with the voodoo and all that. I want to go there and experience that. Like,
okay, Kim?
Mine would be touring all the Civil War battlefields and see what I could come up with, like Gettysburg, any of the other battlefields, and just touring and investigating.
So have you ever investigated any of the sort of the Gettysburg Inns or anything like that?
Not yet.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because my next show is actually going to be on some of the Gettysburg Inns with Richard Estep. But anyway.
That's funny.
It's true. That's my next interview I'll be recording.
That's great.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to say, I don't know, a British castle or something like that.
Those would be neat too, but I don't know. I want to go to New Orleans. I'm into all that stuff, learning about voodoo and all that and all their rich history. I just think it'd be amazing.
It would be amazing. It would.
Even their cemeteries, with their everything being above ground and all that. My cousin has been there and I've seen pictures and it's just amazing. Like, I would love to just dive into that history of New Orleans.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'd like to go to Haiti though for that reason. If it was so.
That would be good too.
Go further back, not just the sort of the 1700s, but before that, like, and some of the sort of where some of it came from in some of the African countries, the whole sort of voodoo and that I'd like, I mean, I do know quite a few people who've been to New Orleans, and I've never heard anyone say a bad thing about it. So, but I definitely think it's not for the faint-hearted. From what I'm told.
Yeah.
Well, last but not least, I mean, we've talked about Edinburgh Manor. We've talked a bit about the history of that. I will say that one of the stewards who ran it, a chap by the name of Roscoe Easterly, which is just a cool name anyway, I have to say that he ran it for about, I think him and his wife ran it for a good 20, 25 years.
Something like that, yeah. And
I did find some newspaper articles commending them on how well they ran it and how happy people were who were living there. And how sort of friendly they were and sociable and everything else. And I do know that Roscoe I think he's buried at, is it Cedar Springs near you guys? Cedar Springs? Would that be right?
Yeah, I've seen something about that on the website there.
Yeah. I think it's
that area.
Yeah. And but he was actually a private in the US Army during World War One. So respect to Roscoe for that. Definite respect. So aside from there, and one, I would say, based on the research I've done, if you do get to investigate it, go in with a completely open mind. Don't go in with sort of expectations of a seedy asylum with lobotomy patients and everything else. Would you agree with that, or would you add something else to it?
No, I agree with you. I think anywhere you go to investigate, you should go in with an open mind.
Oh yeah.
Don't sit there and think, okay, I heard this and this and this is going to happen, so it's going to happen to me tonight, because that's not always what happens. So everybody should go in anywhere with an open mind, especially, you know, asylums and things like that, because they're not always going to be what they're painted out to be.
Yeah. They're not all a horror story. Yeah.
Right.
Would you add anything to that, Kim?
And go in with respect. Go in with respect, too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Agree there 100%. So that's Edinburgh. You know, we've talked about a few other locations that people can go and visit if they're in Iowa, some very well-known, amazing places with amazing people who run them. And there's also your podcast, ladies. What have you got coming up on the podcast that you can shout about, and where can people find you? And if anyone wants to follow you and find out what you're both up to, where do they go?
Okay, well...
Plug away.
Well, next week, it'll probably be just us, because I'm not sure how Kim's going to be feeling. So that's kind of in the air. But the following...
It might get canceled, depending.
Yes, depending. But the following week, on the 15th, we actually have Karen Frey is going to be on.
I know Karen incredibly well, yes.
Yep. She was in touch with us, and I just booked her. So we are going to be talking about some stuff that she has coming up. Some kind of like 36-hour marathon.
Festival of the Unexplained,
yes,
which yours truly is one of the speakers.
Awesome. Well, there we go. So we are going to be talking to her on there about that. So that's going to be awesome and exciting. But you can find our podcast every Thursday night, 8/7 Central, on Spreaker.com. We do have a Facebook page called REP Paranormal and Busters. You can find us on Instagram at RE Paranormal 24. We have a Twitter page, and I have to look these up. This is pathetic because I can never remember what handles I put them under. Is Alison at RE Paranormal. So you can find us on there. We do post all of our upcoming investigations, upcoming guests on our shows on those pages. So feel free to follow us there. You can listen to previous podcasts on Spreaker.com, YouTube, now available on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and probably some iTunes. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you both very, very much for being my guest. I say tonight because it is tonight in the UK, but it's this afternoon where you are. So,
yes.
Today, thank you very much for being my guest today. It's been lovely, as always, to talk to you both. So that's been this week's Haunted Histories. I hope you've all enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed listening to my guests, Alison and Kim, and Bella the dog. Was that Bella again just then?
Yes, it was. She wanted back in.
Can't blame her. She's got good taste. So thank you ever so much for listening. As I said, the next show coming up should be with Richard Estette talking about haunted inns of Gettysburg. So don't miss that one, and don't miss any of them. In fact, you can go back and listen to them all the haunted history shows. There's been some crackers this year, and I don't intend for that to change. We've got some corkers coming up before the end of 2020 for you as well. But on that note, thank you ever so much for listening. Have a good evening. Sleep tight. And don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.